Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough Newham Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission. Can everyone online hear me? Okay, I see some indication so people can hear me. Thank you. This meeting is held at Eastham Town Hall. Members unable to join us physically at this location are able to do so remotely. However, they will not be able to vote and their attendance wouldn't be officially recorded, although virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I'd like to welcome members of the public and the press who are attending physically or who are viewing via YouTube. With regard to meeting etiquette, members of the council, please can I ask that you indicate you wish to speak by raising your virtual hand or your physical hand if you're here present. Can I remind you of the COVID etiquette? Thank you. And for this meeting, we are supported by Roger Raymond, who is here, and Michael Carr, who is virtual. This meeting of the London Borough of Newham Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny is now called to order. And for the viewing public, I would introduce myself. I am Councillor Anthony McCormick, Chair of this Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission. And on my left,
Lewis Godfrey, Green Street West.
Councillor Chantal for East Ham, and I'm a member of this commission.
East Ham.
Okay, we do have witnesses present. What I would do as we're about to take each agenda item, those witnesses would introduce themselves. So it would be more relevant and keep nearer to their agenda items so people might forget who they are. Okay, thank you. So welcome everyone. Apologies for absence.
Yeah, we have apologies from Bailey, Rush, and Hack, and also councillors Morris and Patel, who were on the committee and now are members of the executive, and also Jason Shrelich. These apologies.
Thank you. And I'm sure the commission would like me to extend our warmest congratulations to the two members, Councillor Patel and Councillor Morris, for the promotion to high office. Okay, and I wish you long life in high office. Okay. We miss you though.
And I'll miss you and everyone in the committee.
Somewhere in there was both a compliment and a threat.
Okay, so anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for lateness for Councillor Ruiz and Councillor Wilson.
Okay.
Thank you.
Noted. Is that noted?
Yeah.
Okay, declaration of interest. Is there any member present wishing to declare any interest? Okay. So, Roger, you will note that no one wishes to declare any interest. The minutes of our last meeting will be presented at our next meeting. Is that noted by members? Is that okay? Thank you. Work program. Our work program is as on the agenda. That any member wish to comment on the work program? Comment? Okay, Roger, you would note that members do not wish to comment any further on the work program, so we accept it as presented. Thank you. Let's now move us. Can I ask that we formally agree a reordering of the agenda? So we would take item 6 in place of item 7 in place of item 6. Is that agreed?
We can agree that, yeah.
Okay. Given the time constraint, I'm hoping that we about 30 to 40 minutes maximum on this, depending on how it goes, but I will see how it flows. Now, what I'm going to do is ask members of the executive to introduce themselves, and then I will make some opening remarks regarding this item. And the obviously executive invited to make some opening remarks. That agreed?
That's great.
Thank you. The executives presented us with a paper on this item, which is on page 33 of our agenda. Be helpful for this meeting and to enable this meeting to be constructive. I have had a conversation today with the officer concerned to come ready to answer or to present this paper a different way to us in terms of what does good look like, or effective is the strategy that is being employed. If the perhaps any comparison with neighboring barrier, how big the problem is, etc. And we noted, or I have noted the stats in here, but the stats doesn't tell us anything really. And so we want to dive deeper than the stats. And that is why I thought it would be helpful for the commission and for the officers to make that phone call. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So over to yourselves. Can you introduce yourselves and also before colleagues come in, I know, can we also note our outgoing, our Councillor Lee Parkway for the work that she's done when she was working with us as a crime executive member. She's no longer crime executive member. I'm sure the commission would want to say thank you to Councillor Lee Parkway for
Thank you. That thing you've done for us.
yeah, yes.
Thank you for the report.
She's been a very supportive executive member. So now that she's sitting somewhere else, we will miss you. Councillor Lee Parkway is here to deal with the historical matters on this paper. But Councillor Vardy, thank you for coming and welcome for your promotion. Again, you are one of those that has been promoted to I office. So welcome. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay. So Councillor Vardy would be the person responsible for dealing with because this paper was constructed or put together on the leadership, and Councillor Lee Parkway would deal with any historical matters. Is that noted?
Congratulations.
Okay, all right. So over to the executive. So we start by introduction and then any presentation.
So Councillor Emma,
Can I just clarify what order you're taking items in?
No, I can say this now because we had just agreed that we reorder.
Oh, fine, I lost that.
Okay, sorry. We agreed it just now.
I'll go back to sleep if you
Okay, item 7.
right, okay. Councillor Emma Verdi, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Crime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Carlin Lee Parkway, previous Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety, but now the Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness and Private Rented Sector.
Good evening, committee. Gary Connors, Assistant Director, Community Safety.
Okay, thank you. Is there any presentation or opening remarks? You're welcome to do so.
I'll jump in.
Do you want to do remarks? I'll let him.
Not really, no.
Okay,
Shall I come in, Chair?
yes.
And just to acknowledge, Sharon, thank you for the conversation we had earlier today in regards to the paper. I mean, what we've tried to set out with this paper, obviously the scope is looking to review the implementation of our public space protection order that's focused on alcohol related ASB, but also look to the question, I guess, asked of the executive in this instance was to look at how matters such as drug dealing and other issues are addressed by the Community Safety Service and our Newham Police colleagues, which we have Chief Inspector Mick O'Donoghue here tonight. What the paper has set out is the fact that essentially our strategy and our policy on this was we deal with antisocial behaviour in a range of ways, including street drinking where it becomes antisocial. We would have presented to the committee in the past, or scrutiny committee in the past, is that we implemented a public space protection order to deal with this back in February 2022. Essentially, this gives ourselves and police colleagues powers to intervene where somebody is being antisocial when they're drinking, not before. People are allowed to drink on the street legally. Where you're being antisocial, it is not legal, and that's why we put the public space protection order in place. What I've tried to present in the report, if you look under 3.9, there's various paragraphs before this where I've talked about we previously had a public space protection order in Newham in 2017 to 2020. I've tried to highlight there, bear in mind the end of that would have been into COVID, but I'm trying to highlight the amount of public space protection order warnings that were given by council officers, and also 34 fixed penalty notices across those, essentially across those 3 years. What I've tried to present on here is that I think whilst it's difficult to show sometimes the success of such an operation, because we don't, and I'm showing police colleagues come in a moment, talk about how we report ASB and crime in different ways. It's difficult to have that sort of street drinking specific crime unless we drill down to the data. But what we've looked to do is under 3.9, just point out that we've been using this since new public space protection order came in just over a year ago. Our officers issued, they've gone out on 610 street interventions where alcohol is surrendered and disposed of, linking in with police colleagues on occasions. But also we've issued 19 fixed penalty notices. That was up to February when we looked at the data. We've given a year of it. Essentially, what we've tried to undertake on the next couple of paragraphs, just pointed out what police colleagues do in relation to this. Our police colleagues will look at ASB warnings recorded on airspace, pass incidents over to the council colleagues as well. We'll look to pick it up as a civil enforcement and AFPN where we can as well. That was covering off, Chair and Committee, the public space protection order on alcohol. The thing I would say on that, just before I move on, I suppose to show, we put these in every 3 years. We did a huge public consultation at the start of this, which gave us, not only did we do a data trail to look at whether we could implement this, whether we should implement this, but also we did a public consultation as to whether people wanted this in. It was fairly overwhelming that people wanted public space protection order in place. What the plan will be to do is obviously at the end of a 3-year cycle is to go back out again, do that wider public consultation again. What we can do, and certainly given the conversation we had today, Chair, maybe it was remiss of me not to look at whether we did some community engagement on this to see if there was a reduction. Because outside of the confiscations we do, outside some of the police statistics they pick up on this, and I'm sure Mick might have some of these, as to what instances of FPNs and any other enforcement injunctions police colleagues may have given out. It's hard to work out how successful these things, I guess, are. We'll pick up areas of problem street drinking, and we look to tackle those regularly with this, so we hotspot it. Very quickly on to the next and effectively last section. We've looked at enforcement on drugs. Again, we've got some information here that we've received from police colleagues, and Mick Donohue's here tonight again for that. But it just, the idea of the rest of the paper was try to explain, I guess, how drug enforcement is undertaken, how we in the council undertake from an antisocial behaviour point of view, how we will deal with it through a housing perspective, or how, I guess, how we deal with, we work to either support but also enforce against tenants around drug dealing. We've put an example of the work we've done in there. And on the last sections from 4.5 to 4.7, it's just pointing out how police colleagues effectively undertake drug-related ASB and how they tackle drug-related ASB. And this sits outside of some of the bigger pieces of work that may be done around county lines, drug dealing, gangs, drug dealing, etc. But it just point out how police will tackle individuals, venues, open spaces, but also the kinds of sanctions that we receive, whereas community protection warnings right down to criminal behaviour orders. So that's covered the paper, Chair and Committee. Appreciating the conversation we had earlier, there might have been more asked, but I apologise for that myself from an officer point of view. Happy to take it away, and if I've misread the scope of the document, I can look further. The thing I would say before I finish is, it is difficult to, I think, and Mick Donohue and police colleagues and I, we look a lot at put in a piece of work. We look at how we look at the progress on that work and look to quality assurance. Something like this, we would put it in place across 3 years and look again at the end of 3 years. There are specific areas, particularly I would say, and I've talked to this committee before about specific work in Stratford and East Ham, where we focus a lot of this work and we look at that data on a more regular basis, I suppose, ourselves, to see where we're implementing this and where this is working. And I suppose the last thing I would say, I suppose in defence of maybe not having a fuller detailed document, maybe in some of the outcomes, I think we've presented at the last scrutiny commission we came to back in February. And previous scrutiny commissions, I've focused a lot on our ASB enforcement work and our enforcement work around street enforcement. So again, I probably didn't emphasise those here in relation to street drinking. So apologies for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And just to remind members, we're here to review the implementation of the Public Space Protection Order to address alcohol-related antisocial behavior, also to look at all matters such as drugs dealing and other issues are addressed by the community safety team and the Newham police. That's the Met. Okay. So, over to you, members. Councillor Godfrey.
Very much. So I'm looking at page 34 of the Acts. I'm looking at section 3.4 and also section 3.9. First section talks about, I do apologize, section 3.5, not section 3.4. Section 3.5 talks about the PSPO was ran from 2017 to 2020. And section 3.9 talks about the PSPO that has run from the start of this year. Now, between 2017 and 2020, by my calculations, you issued 34 fixed penalty notices to street drinkers, which works out about just over 11 FPNs per year. But since the 23rd of February this year, you've issued 19 FPNs. So you've issued more FPNs in, what is it now, April, so 3 months, than you have done in comparative years.
That's 22, councillor. Past year.
I do apologise. There you go. This is why you have to read your papers properly. Nevertheless, I think the point still stands that the level of FPNs that you're issuing is staying about the same. Is that right? Would you agree with that?
I would say we're probably, I mean, we're 34 across 3 years, 19 in 1 year. I'd say we're going slightly faster in the sense. The thing I would say, and this may be, and again, sorry, Nick, I keep referring to you, but whether police colleagues will have a view on this as well. And I appreciate I've asked colleagues to record something different that might have been recorded before I was in post. So I don't know how to record in that sense. I had PSPO warnings and fixed penalty clauses. What I would say is we issue FPNs effectively as a last resort on engagement. We engage, we look to dispose of, we ask people to leave. If people leave and they're law abiding in that sense after that, or they haven't understood they weren't allowed to do something, or they haven't understood they're being antisocial in the eyes of the victim, then we'll take that into account. So we've done a lot. That's why we try to record the interventions we've done as well. I'm trying to get police colleagues to do the same, and it's quite difficult on the system because it's not a crystal like head. In police systems, it's difficult to do that, but we're coming to an agreement how we do that, so we can show up. The next time we want to do is we've got evidence, which would be difficult last year to show that we didn't have a lot of evidence gathered. The thing I would say is 19 FPNs, they're the outcomes, the almost the edge of what the most extreme notice that we can give, I suppose, in that sense, from the PSPO is the FPN. We do lots of warnings and interventions before that. So outside of that, I'd still say certainly be half. That's what we did in 3 years. We've done in 1 year. So I'd say we're running a third faster.
Sure. So if you're issuing more FPNs, then that suggests that either your enforcement is getting better or street drinking and social behaviour related to street is getting worse. Does that suggest that the PSPO hasn't worked? Does the PSPO stop antisocial behaviour related to street drinking, or does it just punish people for doing so?
I think it's more the latter. I think we need to where it's antisocial. So what it doesn't do, and what's really difficult, and I think certainly anywhere I've worked where we try to tackle street drinking is really difficult. So street drinking itself is not illegal. People will see it and people will be concerned by it for various reasons, which I completely accept. But unless somebody's actually being antisocial and there is a victim that says this is what's happened to me by those people street drinking. So I don't think it reduces street drinking. Will this help reduce antisocial behaviour street drinking? I think so, because we've tried to focus on the hotspots where residents have told us and members have told us it's a significant issue there. There's more than just street drinking. You know, we've got an issue with people who are doing it late and not late, comments, there's females, etc. So we've tried to focus on some of those areas. I think a PSPO, in my experience, my professional experience, and again, I'm not sure what police colleagues think, doesn't eradicate it alone. There's a whole lot of work we need to do with it. We need to properly target hard in the areas for the infrastructure, lighting, or the broken window syndrome in any of those hotspots. There is there's police work around beyond the PSPO just to tackle what might be the underlying issues. drink related, we're working with colleagues around homelessness, etc. I would, to answer your question directly, though, I think it's less that a PSPO in itself would reduce it dramatically. I think it gives us the tools, and I think shows the council's direction on dealing with it.
And thank you. So I'm going to ask you to answer that question in a much shorter way before I come in with mine. We already agree that you've issued really off of the ethics penalty notices in 1 year. And as my colleague says, is it because enforcement is getting better or the situation is getting worse? Which one is it?
I think it's enforcement. I think it's the enforcement. Or mix it. I think the enforcement, certainly on my side, I've focused enforcement on specific areas. Street drinking is an area we want to focus on. So my office will focus around street drinking as one of a number of key areas. I don't have data to say the situation is getting worse. We analysed the ASB data that's come in and brought to this committee before. I think the hotspot areas remain. I think the town centres are policed a lot better. So I think there's a lot more policing in some of those town centre areas where it was maybe prevalent 2 years ago. I think it's better enforcement.
So my next question is the effectiveness. Now, since 2017, we operate in this, and then we continue in, and again, we start again in 2022. So we've got about how many years? 17 to now, 6 years nearly. So how effective is this in tackling it? Are we any better than we were before? And is there any comparables with neighboring boroughs in terms of
we've looked
we're doing?
Yeah, we've looked at neighbouring boroughs and how people implement various strategies around dealing with street drinking and a range of other things, and the use around public space protection orders. I don't have the data. Looked at it in previous meetings I think we've had here. I think if I'm very honest, Councillor, I think there's a similar vein of questions. For me, it's a really important tool. It's something that gives our officer powers that they wouldn't normally have directly. It gives a direction. On street drinking, it's really important because it gives us that power. And certainly police colleagues have said the same thing and advocated to have a PSPO in place on this because it gives us powers that we might be able to deal with something almost before it becomes a more serious crime. So
thank you. What is our residents telling you about this? What is our residents saying to you?
Currently, right now, a year in, I don't have that data. What they told us 12 months ago when we asked all our residents in a borough-wide consultation, overwhelmingly they wanted in place. They were telling us that they were concerned with the issues around alcohol-related street drinking. I still think there's a concern that people confuse it with general street drinking. If someone's on the street, they think that's wrong. We try to educate people in the publications we put out. But the community were telling us a year ago, overwhelmingly, they wanted something in place to help us tackle this.
Okay. And the reason I asked that, so 12 months ago, they said they want something in place, but we have had something in place. Since 2017, we've had something in place. And we've done that because they're telling us that it was bad and they want something in place. So if they tell you that 12 months ago, that means as it worked from 2017 to 12 months ago, because they're still telling you that.
Hang on 1 second. What I would argue, Councillor, and I said, I think it's what's important is there's a gap between 20 and 2022, 2020 and 2022. There's a gap where it wasn't in place. It was lapsed before I arrived. I came in January 2021 and put a consultation back in place. We've had it back in since 2022. What I would say is, I'll choose my words carefully. I try the best way to put this across. I think it's a really important tool afforded us by the 2014 Increasing Crime Act. We're using it. I think we use it really well. We use it sensibly and we use it properly. I guess my answer to you would be, I think it's working because we put the FDNs in place, because we're making those interventions, because when we speak to people at community residents meetings, we go to safe and neighbourhood panels, we speak to police colleagues, people are saying it's a good thing. We've done community meetings. The most recent one I remember is in Stratford Limpy Park Ward, where people are overwhelmingly supportive of this and supportive of the police colleagues that we're enforcing around this. What I would say though is, I guess the thing I was trying to put across, I don't know if I get it across, is it's almost there are new laws come into play. I mean, they exist almost in eternity. We put this in for 3 months. We believe it's the right thing to do. we will review it after 3 years, I should say. We'll review it after the 3 years to see if we need to continue it. If we don't, and the community don't want it, we don't continue it. If people believe it works. But I think from what I hear from residents we speak to, and people are saying it is a good tool, a good power to have there. You know, it's not eradicated the situation. Everything's not always fixed all the time, but it gives you, we think, gives you the tool to deal with the complaints we give you.
Councillor Vardy, my question to you, where do you want to see this go? What does good look like to you in 12 months' time regarding this?
From what I've seen so far, I think probably be more important for me to probably look at this in more detail when I have more time to actually read all the information, right? I probably couldn't give you a definitive opinion straight away right now, but if I could request, I would like to call upon Councillor Lee Parkway to maybe speak on this, because he should have a lot more insights than myself in regards to this. So if be applicable.
I hear you, but Councillor Lee Parkway cannot speak on it in this instant. The reason for that, I asked, where do you want to see it? You're the cabinet member for it. Where do you want to see it in 12 months' time? She could only speak about the past.
But I would have to go back and read this in more thorough detail, Chair. I think the fact that I've obviously just had this put forward to me right now in these circumstances, just to make a definitive decision straight away to tell you where I think this could go. Couldn't tell you straight away.
Okay.
To go back and look into a bit more detail to come up with, do I think this is something that could work? If that's it, what would for you?
Okay, right. Okay, Councillor Vardy, I leave it there. I've seen two members. Councillor Femi and Shant, which one first? You go first.
So, my question to all of you and whoever can give me the answer, please. According to page number 34, I'm raising the question about 3.2, 3.3 and 3.9. I've been asking in this scrutiny to minimize the ASB and street drinking. It's been happening, especially in East Ham, in front of Sainsbury, in front of Brackless Bank and NatWest Bank, especially East Ham High Street North and High Street Down. We have, since this February, we have in total, according to Met Police report, we have in total 257 crime, and we have 57 antisocial behavior. So to reduce those antisocial behavior and to reduce crime, how many enforcement officers we have hired for, especially for East Ham and neighborhood? And if we haven't done yet, how are we going to protect our area and how we can prevent those crimes? Thank you.
Yeah, if I come in first, I'm sure Mick might come in as well from the police perspective. So first of all, Councillor, I'd be concerned if you haven't seen any enforcement work around that area, because that's a focus for us and it's a focus for my team. I've been down to myself on numerous occasions. I know police colleagues are focused on that area, irrespective of what I'm going to say next. So we should see our focus in that area. It's an issue of high footfall in one of our areas of significance. It's for that combination of crimes, where crimes come together. Absolutely, we'll pick that up. I'll give you aside if we're not seeing that. The question of how many officers have I hired for that specific area? None, I don't know. Specific areas, I've hired officers across the team and we go out intelligence led to specific areas of concern. I've got antisocial behaviour officers who deal with ASB and those issues, and I've got enforcement officers on the street in high areas. I am, as we discussed in previous meetings here, structuring my service where I might look at quadrant based as well. That would absolutely be a focus. But I've also explained to the scrutiny committee in the past as well that both as initially, there's a lot of areas we focus. We cover the whole borough, obviously, and as a range of services. We hear colleagues tonight talk about a range of responses right across the borough. But as a community safety service working with police colleagues, we absolutely do focus on Stratford and East Ham as two areas of main concern. The additional bit I would say before I bring Mick O'Donoghue in is we led a lot of work in the Stratford area working with businesses. We've got to the point where we've got a really strong business crime reduction partnership. We're currently, Mick and I, looking to replicate. I think we've got our first meeting tomorrow or Monday. Look to replicate a very similar thing in East Ham, focusing on High Street, North Green Street, that main area. That would be to hold, to speak initially to residents. Obviously, the crime response, ASB response will go on, but initially to speak to residents, community in the area on a regular basis, have that regular drop in, maybe at the library or another venue, speak to colleagues, bring down highways colleagues, cleansing colleagues, ourselves, the police, youth service colleagues, etc., and start to really focus on that area. So you'll see a big difference. Sorry, I see you want to come in.
Shall I just have a quick additional question?
Yeah.
People when behaved on street when they're really drunk, they can't do anything because they lose their sense. What they're going to do, they don't know. So in Walkfield Road in East Ham, we had a stopped a few weeks ago, and this is pathetic when you hear as a councillor and it happening in our ward. And to prevent those kind of stabbing on the street, how sorry, I forgot your role, Gary.
Sorry, and
So how are you going to prevent those issues on the street?
I'll pass to my police colleague because that's a police response essentially.
Good evening.
Yes.
So I think I was here, I think it was January or maybe December.
Yeah, it was around January, December, yes.
I specifically talked about East Ham being an area of focus.
Correct, yes.
And judge me in 6 months. Do you recall that conversation? So since then, we have had a number of, I suppose, events in High Street, North in and around High Street, North, where we've consulted with the community. We've had pop-up police stations where people can come and talk to us. We've had public meetings in the library down there with my colleagues from the local authority. And this is around gauging what the issues are, recognising that as an area of concern. We have had we've had days of action as early as last week, where we've had licensing visits, specifically around the issues around selling of alcohol, in and around betting shops as well, which are areas where people gather, Street North, and recognising and working with the businesses down there and are some of our large scale betting offices, companies, so how we can reduce this issue in the area. We've also had work with our safer transport colleagues about people coming into the area, gathering around East Ham Tube Station. Tomorrow morning, there is a walk around with the local MP in and around High Street North to further build on that. So these are some of these examples that we have commenced since we last spoke, but recognising that this is not going to change overnight. But there are issues around street drinking. Is it a bad thing to have more enforcement? I would say no. It's recognising that there's a problem and us doing something about it. And I think there is a clear link, and the council is absolutely right, clear link to drinking and violent crime. And I think it's very important, the PSPO, for us to enforce that before things escalate to situations where people are getting a high level of violence and, dare I say it, stabbing. So there is a link towards drink. I think unequivocally, I would say we have to address things before they escalate.
Thank you. Kemi.
I'm just going to follow up what she said. The incident that happened on 12th of April on Oxford Road is stabbing, actually. I went there in the morning. I got the message in the evening. I went there in the morning. I saw the blood on the floor and I was sad. I spoke to some of the residents. The next Saturday, I was doing surgery. Some of these people that live in that area came to the surgery. Now, the complaint is that we've seen this often and often again. And it's like we wake up to see these people drinking on the street and using drugs with them. And there's nothing has happened. And we've complained. What thing I noticed about that street is that they were very organized. They have a WhatsApp group. They talk to each other. They have meetings within themselves. They have details of events that has happened in the past, and what happened on that day?
Okay, excuse me, Councillor.
That morning,
Let's go, Councillor. Right. Can we get to a question rather than narrating?
my question is this, that the problem is that how can we liaise with the resident when this kind of thing happen more to know that we are with you, we're doing all we can to solve the problem, just to give them that confidence.
So how you can best liaise with the police, is that what you're asking?
Residents.
Residents. So as I said before, we have had public meetings there and we will continue to do that. We have used the East Ham Library, we will continue to do that. We've also had an agreement by some of the banks, for example, NatWest Bank in High Street North have agreed to use that space so that people can come in and talk about their issues within the bank. Not least some of the offences that are taking place in High Street North are in and around the banks, and I know you mentioned this yourself, being a non-victim, and this is about crime prevention as well. I know if we're talking specifically about PSPOs, but sometimes they are linked. It's the people who are drinking and committing ASB are committing other similar offences, such as organised crime around theft, around cash point machines. So we're in and around working with the businesses to bring ourselves to the community who are using that thoroughfare. We will continue to use pop-up police stations as well and bring, as I said, recognising that we don't have East Ham police station, unfortunately, which is a real shame, in my personal opinion. We don't have East Ham police station. The nearest police station to here is Forest Gate, which is a significant walk away. So it's a recognition that we have to come into the community to gather there. Sorry, I'm talking to yourself, so I'm talking to everyone really, but to gather how they feel, because the key thing to us, and in recognition in the recent turnaround plan, is that we have lost the trust and confidence of the community. The recent data I've seen, not necessarily for East Ham, but the recent data I've seen within trust and confidence, although there is a long way to go, recognising that, it's actually improving. That's what the communities are telling us. I've seen some of the recent data, which I only saw yesterday. So there's a long way to go, but we have to come out into the community. So we have to be very innovative around it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to be rounding this up. We're seeing Gary, and then I'm going to bring, did you put your hands up? So within the next 5 minutes or so, I'm going to round this up. So you have to be quick.
I'll be very quick, Chair. Just following up on what Mick said. You know, there's also, you know, we have used, and we need to continue to utilise. I know that the police colleagues are revitalising our safer neighbourhood panels as well, where we speak to the local communities. We need to be far more savvy together on social media. I think we do quite a bit of it, but we need to do more. But also utilising our community assemblies and properly utilising the existing areas of communication with the community. But the last thing I'd probably say, you know, and we're going to start doing this when we ask people down there. We're not just going to be telling them stuff. We're going to ask them how they want us to communicate. So also, if councillors, you've got ideas that we haven't thought through, you know, good avenues of communication that we're not utilising, please feel free. We're happy to speak outside and talk through it. But we have to get the community. They need to be able to come speak to us, tell us what they're seeing, but also then seeing the outcomes of it as well.
Thank you. Lewis?
So of those 19 FPNs that you've issued since February last year, what's the demographic makeup of people you've issued them to?
Have to go back and look, Councillor. I didn't.
You should be able to get that information back. The reason I ask is that one of the big criticisms of these kind of enforcement orders is that people feel that they target more vulnerable individuals, and it would be really good to get this evidence just to see if that is or isn't the case.
Yeah, the one thing I would just say very quickly, and I'll go and look to get the breakdown, but we have very specific criteria around how we enforce it, and how police enforce it. But certainly we cannot enforce this to somebody who is drunk because they are vulnerable. We can't enforce the so whilst there's balance, also we can't issue FPNs under 19 and anyone would be vulnerable.
Okay. One of the deterrent of issuing this is that the fine has to be paid. As the fine being paid, issued some in the first tranche, and then we issue 19. Those 19, how much have been paid?
I'll check that as well, Council. We issue lots of FPNs for lots of things. That's just the ones we've taken out on alcohol. I'll check those.
And the reason, well, you know why I'm asking, because if somebody's committing antisocial behavior and you're issuing a fine, especially if they're not working and they're drunk, etc., So that goes in the bin. And if it's not enforced, so therefore it's not a deterrent because they're not paying for it. So it all goes down to effectiveness. And as a scrutiny, we are supposed to form opinions on what we hear, etc. And from what we are hearing is that we don't know how effective this is because you haven't told us how effective it is. And we know you're doing stuff. You're issuing notices. You're there, you told us you're speaking to members of the public, etc. But on the other hand, members of the public are still crying out for more enforcement. My colleagues mentioned what happened a few weeks ago in their ward, etc. And so, but sitting here, we're not getting the feeling that this is being, we're spending money, we're doing things, but is it effective?
Can I come in?
Yes.
If you don't mind, Chair, let's just thinking back over the last 6 to 8 months worth of scrutinies that I've sat in.
Yeah.
Spoke a lot about the need and the importance around enforcement and having a presence on the street. I came here some months ago and spoke about the increase in the budget in order to respond to what residents were asking us. And that was, we want to see uniform officers on our streets, protecting and keeping us safe. And just listening to the comments just a moment ago, I guess, you know, we're talking about specifically a tool in which is being used in order to catch perpetrators in what it is that they're doing. Whether that's right or wrong is not necessarily the argument here. It's how effective is that? What I would say to you is that Gary just said something just a moment ago, which the remit in which a PSPO is written is very clear about what you can do, but also what you can't do. And in actual fact, the FPNs in which have been issued have been done so in a matter responding to the issues because of not responding when asked to, for instance, surrender alcohol, when asked, for instance, to stop doing such behaviour on a continuous basis. So it's not being used as the first result, it's being used as the last result. But more importantly, I guess my point I want to make is we've sat in this chamber and spoke about the importance of what residents are saying regarding wanting to feel space in the places which they occupy. And Councillor Shantu speaks quite passionately about we need more enforcement, we need to see more police. And there is a wider question around how we communicate that. I do think there's a couple of issues that we need to be mindful of, which is social media obviously runs away with a story before actually we get the details as a local authority. We're not an emergency service. We are a local authority that delivers services. So it's just, I think what I'm trying to get at is in the year that I've been in post, we've spoken a lot about the need for enforcement. We've responded. We have enforcing, we have people out on the street working through the issues that are currently taking place. But also more to that, we also have an organisation of which we commission to do that light touch enforcement around littering, fly tipping, and so on and so forth. So we're responding to the request in which.
Thank you. And can you round up because of the time? Okay, thank you. And Gary, you mentioned about communication, social media, community assembly. Most people would be in some form of social media. Community assembly is just a fraction of our population is in community assembly, so that doesn't cascade the information and get it out there. Come strategy, I suppose, and I suppose that would be for Councillor Vardy to be looking at come strategy in making certain, because the thing is, it is what our people feel, whether they feel safe or not, because sometimes they're not always crime there, but if they don't feel safe, they're going to present it as, you know, crime hotspot, etc., and so on. So there's some work to be done there. Because of time, and there's always with scrutiny, there's never enough time to go into these matters as we should. But thank you for the paper.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for attending. Now we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which if we had followed the agenda, we would have been doing, we moved from item 6 to item 7, so now I'll be going back to item 6. And Councillor Asser will now have his time.
Do introductions of the office.
Let me introduce this item first, and then we do the officer's introduction. For road safety and road offences, and it will look for the commission. It will allow the commission to review our council and the police approach and address the issue relating to road safety and road offences. We have the cabinet member and officers, so Councillor Asa, can you introduce yourself and your colleagues?
Yes, so for the record, I'm Councillor James Astor. I'm the Cabinet Member for Environment, Sustainable Transport and the Deputy Mayor.
Hi, I'm John Morris. I'm the Deputy Cabinet Member for Highways and Sustainable Transport.
And on the screen, we have a wealth of talent and experience. Jim Gordon, Murray Woodburn and Jamie Clifton. Jim is laughing, that's the thing there is to need to know. In the interest of time for always, I'm going to just say very few words, if that's okay. I think everybody has seen it and probably read it. I think what I would just point out, and Murray, who drafted, but we'll try just a few lines. It covers the questions you raised, but I think also what we've included in there is information about where we have powers and where we don't, which I hope is helpful, because I think one of the difficulties with this is understanding the complexity of how the law works, how the enforcement powers work, and what roads are ours and what we have power over, which often, you know, councillors will be aware of this. You'll get requests for things that we just don't have the powers to do, particularly around things like speeding and that kind of thing, because is a complicated mishmash of laws and ownership. So hopefully that information there is helpful in terms of guiding the committee in terms of being able to frame its questions. I don't know if Murray wants to add anything to that.
No, I don't think so, Councillor Asher. I mean, I think that the purpose of the report was very much, as you say, to try and identify what we can and can't do in relation to the Commission's inquiries here. And to set out where we are doing things, what we are doing in those areas, and how we are engaging with the police where we don't have those powers to try and secure their involvement in these matters.
Okay, thank you. Before I go over to members, we spent a lot of time on item 7 because it's more or less to do with the council. We're going to spend a bit more time on item 8. This one, I'm proposing that we spend a shorter time because, and the reason for that is most of the enforcement activities and so on is not, as Councillor Asa says, is done to the Metropolitan Police. And so what the information is mostly about the information and explaining, defining what these different offenses are, etc. There are very few that, was only a few that we can more or less enforce. So over to colleagues, so Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you very much. Just very, very quickly, given time, we've obviously congratulated some people on various job moves. Remiss not to congratulate one of our officers on his 16 years at the London Borough of Newham. I'm of course talking about Murray. Murray, 16 years. I think murderers get short sentences.
I love that.
I don't know, do they, Mick? I'm not sure. But congratulations on your time here, and congratulations for all the really positive work that you've done in your time here. It's much appreciated by all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Godfrey.
I'll jump in at that point, because I was going to do this at the end, but as you've raised it, just to quantify that for those who don't know, Murray is leaving us in May after 60 years. I should put on the record, he's done an incredible amount of work. The borough has changed because of it, and his legacy will linger on. We were going to miss him immensely, as particularly in scrutiny meetings when I can just turn to him and get him to talk at you for 5 minutes and tell you everything to know. So, but I think this basically this will be his last scrutiny, so I did want to mention it at the end. But as you've touched on that, I will record my thanks and thanks on behalf of the executive and the council at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, gosh, I'm blushing. Thank you.
We're not going to let you on. I'm looking at page 28, section 23, which talks about tackling casualty hotspots. we talk in this section around a kind of firstly a reactive and responsive approach. But I wanted to know what reactive work has been done to analyse incident hotspots. I wanted to know what changes were made as a result of this reactive work and analysis. And I wanted to know how we know those changes are effective.
Okay, well, thank you for the question, Councillor Godfrey. The reactive changes that we will do in the event of when we are looking at accident statistics, those reactive changes are very much down to what the causality of those accidents have been identified as in the post-accident analysis, which is undertaken by Metropolitan Police colleagues and is recorded on what's called a Stats 19 accident form. So what we will do is we will analyse the causation factors which have contributed to this accident, and based on what they are, we will make remedial changes that will address that. So for example, road surface condition or drainage or some other aspect of the highway may be identified in certain cases as something that may have contributed to an accident. So we will generally deal with that. But more generally, we are looking at changes in highway layout. We are looking at locations where potentially residents or other users are trying to cross the road in a certain location, and there is an evidence of casualties happening in that location, and our remedial action would be to implement a controlled crossing of some sort, for example. Similarly, if we have a speeding issue which is related to vehicles that are traveling too fast and on the approach to a bend, for example, then there are measures which we would implement to reduce vehicle speeds at that point. Now, monitoring and post-scheme monitoring is a key aspect of everything that we do. So we are obliged really to go back and record the outcomes from the schemes that we've done. And of course, in a way, the accident figures that we get in future years will inform us to a certain extent whether we have solved the problems in a particular location. But essentially, we will look at monitoring. So if speed is an issue, for example, we will go back and monitor speeds after that intervention to verify that it has been successful. But as I say, it's a case of horses for courses. It depends what the causality of the accident that we're working on, what those factors actually were. And depending on those factors, we will make different changes to the highway or to the highway layout or to the visibility, or by removing bits of clutter, which have in some way been identified as contributing to that accident. But as I say, it's not easy to give you a sort of general answer because it is entirely dependent on the nature of the problem that we're trying to solve.
And I think that's fine. I'm not asking for a general answer. Can you give me specific examples so we can sort of envision what kind of things go on when you're doing this work?
Okay, well, we had a motorcycle fatality at Wharton Road junction with Stratford High Street. And what was identified as one of the contributory factors there was the gradient of the road and the visibility, because there was a large crown effectively on Stratford High Street itself, which impinged on visibility from the side roads on Vic Roberts Way and Wharton Road. So effectively what was done in that location was that the carriageway was actually reprofiled to a certain extent to remove that obstruction, that physical visual obstruction. Another example would be, let me think, Stratford Gyratory or Stratford High Street, rather. We have a pedestrian crossing at sort of Let Road, approximately just near Let Road. And there were issues there with the pedestrian green time. And we had an incident where an elderly person was struck by a vehicle. not seriously injured, but nonetheless an incident there. And that was a very simple exercise of engaging with Transport for London, looking at the traffic signal timings and adjusting them accordingly to provide more green time for those pedestrians. So there's a couple of relatively recent examples that I can give to you, which may be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Francis.
Hi, according to page number 24 and 26, I would like to present my question. We can see the lot of times the driver not following the, not parking on the right side on the road, and they're not following the yellow lines. And also I would like to say yellow lines sometimes invisible. I have seen physically why they're doing wrong. So yeah, we need to, I think, make sure yellow lines are visible. And also, I also seen physically, because resident rail stations, there are some area we don't have a CCTV. On those, what is no CCTV, the driver think, well, I can break the speed limit, I can do wrong parking, whatever I want to do, I just can't do that. So the thing happening is not just now, it's the ongoing issues. So how we can prevent those issues, and what action plan we have currently?
Well, there's a few issues there. First of all, on the visibility of yellow lines, I mean, that's a key issue for us, because clearly if the line or the parking restrictions are not clearly visible, then any enforcement of that parking restriction could be challenged by the individual and would likely be successful. So we have been undertaking a pretty significant lining and marking renewal program, including zebra crossings, yellow box junctions, as well as parking restriction lines. It costs us money for every penalty charge notice that is appealed and turned over. So it is in our best interest to make sure that all of our signing and lining is very clear, and all of our signage is very clear, because the supporting signage has also to be clearly displayed. Now, just on that topic, while we're covering this issue, I think it's worth mentioning at this point that we are having increasing instances where we are finding the willful defacing or obscuring or repositioning of traffic signs, so that we are unable to enforce. So, for example, we have come across locations where parking signs have been spray painted over, in order that we are unable to enforce in those locations. So it's an increasingly difficult problem for us to tackle. You also mentioned, Councillor, the issue of CCTV coverage, but I think what I wanted to try and express in the paper is that we are quite limited in what we can actually enforce in terms of traffic and parking offences with CCTV cameras. And you mentioned speeding there, and that is specifically one where CCTV is not usable. So you know, we are obviously using enforcement cameras at our moving traffic contravention sites, so at yellow box junctions, at banned turns, on no entries, and other locations where the level of compliance is quite low, and therefore there's a significant safety risk as a result. But unfortunately, our ability to enforce parking regulations with cameras, static cameras, has been very severely limited in recent times, and we are now only able to enforce parking restrictions in either mandatory bus lanes or mandatory cycle lanes. So those cycle lanes that have a solid white line. Those are the only two types of parking offence that we can enforce with cameras. So we are a little sort of hamstrung in terms of our abilities to use CCTV to address some of these issues.
I could just jump in on the CCTV, because I think it's a political point, and I think it's an important one. What you used to be able to do is enforce these regulations by cameras. So roads like the Romford Road, where we know we have a massive problem on this, you would have been able to put up a camera. I mean, I remember getting one outside Barking Station because I was having to pick someone up. And, you know, you can't do that anymore. There was a deliberate change by the current government to make it so you had to have a physical person there watching them. Now, if you've got a problem, for example, with dropping off on double yellow lines outside a station, you can't enforce that because we can't enforce it by CCTV, and the watching time is they come and go. You are never going to be able to employ enough parking wardens to manage the size and length of some of these roads, which is why CCTV was used. During that period when it was used, obviously decluttering took place of pavements, get the bollards, you didn't need them anymore. It has basically hamstrung councils in being able to enforce some of that stuff. It needs to change back, to be honest, because the downside is to pedestrians and people trying to use the road safely. So I would hope, this is my political point, that if we get a change of government, we can get that done, because of it has been deliberately aligned to make it easier to flout the rules, to be honest. And we are the third biggest parking service in London. We are the fifth biggest issuer of tickets in the country. This is not a small service. We are in a position which is extremely difficult because we've had one arm tied behind the back, as indeed as other councils.
Okay, thank you. So declaring an interest, maybe I should switch to all my camera issue tickets. That's not to be meditated.
Your number, Chair.
That's TFL cameras.
Right. Okay. I noticed on the speeding, the Newham Way, let's take from Cannington to until we exit our Barrow boundary in Barking. They have the average speed camera there. Are those cameras turned on? Are they enforceable?
Yeah, so I once again a long time ago went on one of those speed awareness courses, not from around here, I have to say. And that if you go, but you can choose where you go, and if you go to the ones that are held locally, it is filled with people who have been done in the average speed check on the A13 because everyone assumes it's not working. Average speed check actually is probably much more effective than a speed camera because there's no way of doing that. Slow down for the camera and speed up. So yes, I've seen the evidence with my own eyes.
Okay, okay, Councillor, I know that you're guilty.
Very minor infraction. It's the only one I've had in 30 years of driving, I would like to say.
Somebody's got your chair.
Okay, so that answers my question. One of the things that I know there's nothing we can do but just make a comment. 600 hit and run in 3 years. It's a lot. And I know there's nothing that the council can do about this. I know there's nothing that the police can even do because it's just people are not behaving the way they should. They just hit and run, but it's just an alarming figure that we've seen here where people are hit and running. There's another bit here. Oh, the Royal Albert Road, I think it's mentioned that the speeding there on the road is being closed off at a certain time. I also noticed on page 26, the second to last paragraph before driver's behavior, be implementing a road closure similar to what another borough has been doing. Have we done that already, or is it something to be done?
You mean in terms of Royal Albert Way?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're in the middle, and I'll bring officers in a sec. It's obviously something that's in to me because it's in my ward. And just to give everyone the context, if you've not seen it, we have reached a point where that road has been used for not just speeding, but for car gatherings and car racing. And we reached quite a appalling point where we had footage of fire engines on emergencies being forced away for racing. We've had hundreds and hundreds of complaints. So we have, as you say, we've been closing it physically by parking a vehicle across it. That's not sustainable. What we're looking to do is using signage with camera enforcement, close it so the sign will display the speed limit during the day and then can be turned over to a no entry sign enforced by cameras. which obviously gives us a little bit more flexibility because at the moment the van turns up a certain time. One thing we found during holiday is the racers try and work around the closure. And it was being advertised online. We had people coming from far as Essex and Kent and Surrey to this. It seems to have dispersed now, but we're hoping this will work combined with the PSPO that is in place. I'll pass over to Officer, they particularly feel it's something that he.
Can that be in a minute, please? Because I think James has answered that for me adequately.
I don't know if Jim just wants to come in because I know you've been working on this.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. Effectively, what we've got is a new variable message sign. These signs can actually be worked remotely from a control room, so we can change them from a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit during the day to a vehicles prohibited sign at night. Between the hours of 10 p.m. and 3 a.m, we can actually use this to enforce people who are gathering there for these car meets. We've now got the cameras up, one at Stansfield Road, junction with Royal Albert Way, and one on Galleons Roundabout. Thankfully, TfL have allowed us to use their land to do this. Now, the cameras and the actual signs we're hoping should be commissioned by the end of next week. And then we'll go into a period of testing of those, and then we'll begin enforcement. Part of that enforcement, we'll be working with our Metropolitan Police car meets team colleagues, because obviously we know that they will probably turn up once they realise the road's not closed. We will see them contravening the signs, but the police are going to be there on the first Saturday evening and a couple of weeks after on a Saturday to actually stop the vehicles in there to basically say, you know, you've seen the signs, what you're doing in here. So not only will they be enforced by the cameras, they'll also be spoken to by the police. And if they're seen committing any offences, they will be offered Section 59 warnings. Now, these warnings, they get one of them. If they come back do it again, the police can actually seize their vehicle. So there's some good powers there that can be used. And obviously working with ourselves and our community safety colleagues, we're going to try and nip this in the bud and save a lot of the problems down there. If it works, it may be something that we can trial in other areas of the borough, because we've had similar issues up by Pudding Mill Lane and Barbers Road with people driving like lunatics around there as well. Fortunately, the opening of the Aber Voyage Arena and a new flat top crossing that we're putting in has deterred a lot of that. But also working with the DLR using their camera footage, the police have already sent out a load of these warnings to the people who've turned up. So we're starting to make inroads, but it is slow.
Do we have a common strategy for people in the neighborhood? Because I now know why the roads have been closed off, because up until I read this paper, I didn't realize why. Because it's been an inconvenience sometimes driving and the road is closed. So is there a common strategy for informing the neighborhood what it is we're trying to do, or are these roads going to be closed?
It kind of works on two levels. We will do a formal one, but we actually have a bit of an informal one too, because the residents gathered themselves together using a WhatsApp group, which had a very large number of residents. We've been engaged using them as a kind of representatives, a bit like they're sort of like a neighbourhood association really, except it's not a single neighbourhood. And everything we've been doing, we've been keeping them updated so that they can use that group to inform the other residents what's going on. So far, the feedback has been positive. They're hoping it'll work, and they're quite pleased that there's a permanent solution coming in. But obviously, we want to make sure that it works, which is why the police element is quite important. Yeah. Worth saying that the police are extremely stretched over traffic policing because of the cuts they've suffered. But we are working with them, as Jim has said, with their specialist team to be able to try and hit it from both ends.
Yeah. And Lewis will be the last person. Then I make some comment. Lewis.
Okay. So, Councillor Morris, congratulations on the new role. It's interesting that you're in this committee, because this committee is about crime and antisocial behaviour and community safety. Normally, you'd probably put yourself in front of the Regeneration, Housing and Environment Committee. Part of your role focuses on active travel and implementing infrastructure which supports active travel. we've seen that things like LTNs, like Healthy School Streets, can improve community safety. LTNs, there is good evidence which suggests that accidents and collisions drop by about a half within LTN areas. Although your role is focused on highways, do you see the potential for your role to take in elements of community safety and deliver safer communities for our residents?
So first of all, I would say that my role isn't just about highways, it is sustainable transport. And as you mentioned, there is a community safety element within that. LTNs, for example, there's good evidence to suggest that the natural surveillance of making residential streets more walkable means that there's a decrease in fly tipping, there's a decrease in crime because there's more eyes on the road because they're much more walkable and there are more people that are willing to walk in those residential roads. So while I would not say it's an official part of my duties, certainly something that I am pleased about delivering are policies that ensure community safety.
Thank you.
Hi, my question according to page number 27 and paragraph 6, I'm just quoting paragraph 6, the council would therefore welcome further joint operation with the MPS of this sort to help improve unregistered, columned and untaxed and unlicensed vehicles and from our roads and to ensure those driving them face the full force of the law. So I would like to know by when, how are you going to implement those?
Well, thank you, Councillor. We've actually had a number of these stop and check events with the police as part of a previous round of work on this hit and run crackdown. And as I've mentioned in the paper, when those events have taken place and vehicles have been randomly stopped and those checks undertaken, the actual hit rate in terms of vehicles with something wrong with them or with a driver with something wrong with them, you know, that hit rate has been pretty large. So those are very successful events. But again, it's a policing resource issue. There are lots of demands across London for this sort of work. And we have to ask politely if we can engage with our police colleagues to arrange these operations. But it's quite clear that the reason that hit and run accidents happen, the reason that people leave the scene of an accident without reporting it, is generally because there is some defective situation, either with the status of their vehicle or indeed with themselves. You know, they're either under the influence of drink or drugs, or they have a warrant for their arrest, or, you know, whatever it might be. So if we can tackle the people who are driving around thinking they can get away with driving in a vehicle that's untaxed or unregistered or you know, uninsured, or, you know, that they, again, you know, they are, you know, driving around with a warrant for their arrest. If we can remove those people and those vehicles through these sorts of checks, then that is the way that we will certainly tackle our hit and runs. So we will continue to engage with the police, and we will continue to try and have these stop and search ones. The last one was on Romford Road, I remember, about a year ago, I think, and I think there was over 100 vehicles with some sort of issue in that single check. So you know, I have seen some pretty horrific things as well. We've obviously had a whole bunch of residents write to us, and the residents from places, you know, had a letter from a lady in Exeter saying that I have had a penalty charge notice for driving through the Browning Road traffic restriction, and I've never taken my car to London ever. Now that is a clear example of a vehicle with a cloned registration plate being captured by our cameras, which some poor person suddenly gets a letter about, which they know absolutely nothing about that offence. And one of the most disturbing things that I've seen, which I reported to Jim, which Jim then reported on to his police colleagues, was 2 red transit vans parked back to back, with boxes being transferred from one van to the other, and both vans had the same registration.
Yeah.
So these are the sorts of issues that we have to actually physically stop vehicles and catch. And that's why our sort of joint operations with the police are critical in tackling our hit and runs. But those are just some of the issues that we are trying to catch in relation to these operations where we will pull vehicles over.
Thank you.
Yeah, with your indulgement, just give us some information for council, they may be interested on the back of that question. Just that you know, and I think it's back up and running, there is Community Road Watch, which is run by a couple of PCSOs, which involving members of the community using radar guns, which I've done in the past. It's really interesting in terms of if you're interested. Quite good fun to use the gun actually, but if you're interested in this and getting an idea of how it works and how some of this, the kind of problems we've got it's worth kind of seeing if you can go on one, just taking part, because it is quite informative in itself, and I think will probably actually help the committee in their thoughts on some of this stuff. So I'm sure we can through Gary's team find out if they're still happening and get some locations if people are interested.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Right. So my view of this paper is that it's mostly informative because most of the stuff here.
We hope you feel it.
Mostly it's for information because most of the stuff here is not enforced by us. However, one thing that is enforced by us is the parking, the pavement parking, etc. You said, James, that we're the 5th largest issuer of penalty notices. How do you enforce payment?
I may pass over to Jamie to go into the details on this, because obviously there's an array of things. I mean, we do have to do some write-offs every year because there is no London Borough collects everything. We've done a lot of work to increase our collection rate. The cost of living crisis has impacted on collection rates across London. Jamie, can I get you to jump in on?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of when someone receives a penalty notice, they will receive that either for a on-street infringement or one that has come from a moving traffic contravention camera. They've then got the option.
Sorry, Jamie. Just we know that they got it. How do you enforce payment?
So in terms of enforcing
the time, yes.
Someone can either settle at discount rate or they can pay later and pay the full amount. And there's also the option to go to the independent adjudicator. Now, assuming someone has not paid, we will follow up through our enforcement agents, who will, in some cases, enforce payment via bailiffs. We have varying degrees of success with that. We do, as Councillor Assa said, have to write off a certain amount of debt, as do all local authorities. The main issue we have is with what we call persistent evaders who are on false number plates and occasionally foreign vehicles, where we are simply unable to trace the origin of those vehicles and are therefore not able to trace the owners. That's something that we're working hard on at the moment to provide the means to be able to trace those vehicles and improve the recovery rates of those debts.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, you need to go. We have 29 minutes left today and we need to move on. Sorry. Yeah. So thanks very much, officers and members, for those two previous items. We now move on to item 8 on the agenda. For this item, there's 2 cabinet members, or more than 2 cabinet members here. So who is the main cabinet member for this item 8? Okay, right. So Councillor Lee Parker, I think you've moved to housing. So what we're going to do present in terms of the report, there's a draft report, and I have agreed with the executive that we're going to receive a draft response now, and a detailed formal response will be made available to us after this paper is sent to cabinet in June. However, I suppose the draft response was done under the watchful eyes and supervision of Councillor Vardy So he would deal with the questions relating to the draft response. Any historical question will be Councillor Lee Parkway. So that is how we are going to do it. So I would introduce this item. So this item is called State of the Borough Report. Executive response will allow the commission to discuss the executive response in the report later this or the next municipal year, more or less. So we have the cabinet members I outlined. Can you introduce yourselves quickly and then a brief opening remarks, and then we go over to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As mentioned, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Crime, Councillor Amaverdi. So obviously this is the State of Borough draft report that's coming here now. And obviously as introduction, obviously I will be asking officers and Councillor Lee Parkway to obviously and other colleagues that are present to speak on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Colin Lee Parkway, previous Cabinet Member for Crime Community Safety, and now the Cabinet Member for Housing Needs, Homelessness and Private Rented Sector. And along with us, we have today Councillor Sarah Riz from Children's Services and Councillor Neil Wilson from Adults and Health Social Care, and along with his deputy, Councillor Mumtaz. And then obviously we've got Gary and Michelle who can talk to the items. And I'm not sure if James is still on the screen, but he was there, but I'm not sure if he's still there.
What's still on there, yeah.
Yeah, and Jamie Cook, the interim corporate director. He's eating the sweets that he's not provided us, but okay. So Chair, thank you for the introduction. I just want to make it very clear that one of two things. One, firstly, I'd like to apologise that this report is coming today in draft form, considering it was presented back in 2022. But as you already said, that you've had conversations with the executive and chief executive, and an agreement has been made that it will then come back to this scrutiny for approval as and when it's completely ready, and that should be after June. In the report before you today, there was 12 recommendations made by the previous Crime and Community Safety Scrutiny back for the municipal year of 2021 to 2022. And as I said earlier, we have colleagues in the room that can talk to some of the items specific, if there's specific questions around those, especially that of young people and the adult side of the questions. And I'll leave it as that, Chair, until you decide to go through.
Thank you. I will be guided by members in where the questions go. So I think Councillor Godfrey.
Yeah. So I'm looking at page 60, section 5.11.
Sorry,
can you speak up? Sorry.
So I'm looking at page 16, which is labeled as page 4, and section 5.11 of the report.
Okay.
I just want to take an opportunity to congratulate Councillor Lee Parkway on getting to a position where we're going to be able to have an out-of-hours service or ASB, noise and nuisance. It's something my residents are really appreciative of. It's something that they see as a really important resource. It's going to make a world of difference to them. Could you talk about how you came to the position where you could put this in place?
Okay, I'll pass over to Gary, but I'll give a couple of remarks. So and please just bear in mind my responses and all the responses of tonight are in draft format. Sorry, just a caveat. So we came about this because of, obviously we're all elected members who've been in this space for quite a long time. But in the previous scrutiny, one of the lines of inquiries were talking to the absence of the noise nuisance service, and the recommendation was that actually they should have one. When I first came back to this scrutiny, I think it was my first scrutiny, I talked specifically to, we're going to get this done, we're going to check that the data is saying what the data is saying, and we're going to make sure that we are committed to hearing residents and delivering them what it is that they've asked us. And that was part of it. But I'll pass over to Gary, who might be able to give you a little bit more in-depth detail in regards to the reasons why we came back into wanting to have this service.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for the question, Councillor. Yeah, I think, if I'm very honest, I as an officer and a senior officer councillor, I welcome this recommendation. I agreed with it. And, you know, I guess I welcome the line of questioning throughout that scrutiny. I presented a number of papers across that municipal year that looked at, I did benchmarking with other boroughs, looked at other things, worked in other councils myself where I both had and not had non-lucent teams. What I suppose with the question specifically, where do we get to on this? Once my previous cabinet lead, Councillor Pathway, came into post, talked them through the fact that we needed to look at growth in an area where we couldn't as a service, and speak with my corporate director as well, we couldn't essentially leave or reduce one area of service to build up this. So the idea was we needed to look at growth. So we successfully put a growth bid in recently at that accepted, and partly what I've put forward as a growth bid, and I've mentioned back here on numerous occasions, speaking with yourselves, Councillor, it's not just to put in, it's more to put in an out of hours tasking response. So it's not just for input. I'm hoping they can support the issues that we have, fly tipping out of hours that we know we do, and hopefully pick up some of that. We can help support some of the other issues, the on the street ASB issues, hopefully support our regulatory services colleagues around the nighttime economy as well. So the idea is to cover all of that, but focused primarily on having this response to noise out of hours. To answer your question really, really quickly, is we acknowledged, looked at it, we benchmarked with other areas. We looked at our data, which was overwhelmingly high levels of ASB and noise casework, far overwhelming our officers in the opposite cohort we had. We have beefed up that ASB cohort, which is helpful. Now it's tackling the out of hours noise and the on street issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Tranter.
Hi, it's from the page number 6 and point 5.3. We know the men been said because one murder happened in Tollgate Road by fire. So we all had the thing happened in Tollgate Road. So I would like to know, as it's ongoing issues, we've seen many women, they're dying or they've been abused on road. We've seen many women being murdered and happening also in our borough. How we're going to tackle those kind of abusing behavior or murder towards women?
Thank you. So just going back to the report that's before you today, and I would actually say that all cabinet members here, including the deputy mayor, would agree that when we look at the issues around violence against women and the council's response to that, we are all in agreement that we do that as a one council. Not one service can work on its own in isolation. What I would say, Councillor Shantu, is, you know, none of us here would think that violence against women should go unheard. And the crimes in which you spoke about are unfortunate crimes, but I would say they are not crimes that happen every day, thankfully. We're all committed. We're completely committed, hence the reason why we drafted the domestic abuse strategy, reasons why, and that was launched in November of last year. The reason why we have very much robust conversations at community safety partnership level, where we work as a partnership, not just the council, but all our partners, whether that be probation, the police, fire brigade and health. We have those robust conversations that we not just are dealing with the ramifications of such crimes, but we are thinking about prevention rather than cure in the situations when it comes to violence against women. We're also taking a lot of time to understand and listen to our young people through our schools, through our youth service, through children that we know through our leaving care cohorts and so on and so forth, where we're understanding what it is that their asks are. And so, for instance, in that space, young people have asked specific things around lighting, around wanting to feel safe on their journeys to and from school, especially in the later months of the year when it's darker. So I guess the answer to your question is we are taking it seriously. I did say before, and I'll reiterate it again, we are not an emergency service, but we do provide services that are proactive services to try and reduce situations and circumstances before they happen. But we are committed and robust in how it is that we work as a service, a whole council, in order to ensure that things like the roads are safe to walk on, the services we provide for adult social care are ones that are tangible the conversations we're having through young people, educating them from the beginning, are things that we are doing together. And then as the service that we're providing the enforcement that's needed on the streets and the visibility that's requested by residents. I don't know if you want to add something.
If I could just really quickly, Councillor, and hopefully we cover a lot of what we are doing collectively on 5.5 as well. The 5.3, 5.5 were quite similar questions in a sense, and the answers are interconnected. Try to split them up slightly. But I think just reiterate, as Councillor Pathway said, certainly through Councillor Wilson, we've driven out a really robust domestic abuse strategy, which is equally driven by Councillor Lewis and Councillor Pathway last year. The wider piece, I can certainly account for work the police are doing in absolutely driving, certainly North East Borough and Waltham Forest and Newham, the work we're doing around that women's safety piece. When you ask specifically, and some of this is embedded both in our women's safety and open spaces action plan we're doing, but also in the domestic abuse strategy. We have, under the community safety partnership, which is partners all around the table on crime, we have to undertake domestic homicide reviews when somebody dies in that domestic homicide situation. There's different reviews on street, there's different police reviews. I would also, certainly my colleague Michelle Edwards, there's a whole lot of drive through young women's safety projects through the youth defending service and linking into youth empowerment service as well. But I think it's quite robust. I think it's really well connected. And certainly we sit in each other's boards. I'm a key member on the Safeguarding Adults Board, the Children's Safeguarding Partnership. These are our priorities going forward. Women's safety is a priority.
Great, thank you. I've seen Councillor Lewis and Wilson, and I'll come back to you in a minute.
Additional question, so shall I ask now? It's additional question, similar question.
Similar question. Okay, so you ask and then they can maybe answer it. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I have seen a lot of strategy you have created to prevent those I think those murder and those abusing behavior. And I would like to recommend at the moment at school, I haven't had anything from the school, that young boys learning from the school how to behave other women or other people regardless of gender. So I know the school gives some sexual education, and I will be very happy if I see school also putting some strategy how to behave towards them. At the moment, I don't think so. It does happen often at school.
Okay, so just to answer that, I think Councillor Ruiz will be able to answer that in complete fullness, and maybe Michelle also. But Councillor, we had the conversation about this before, if I remember rightly, and I think members of the Scrutiny Commission might have remembered the conversation that we had. And through the PHSE, PHSE programme that runs in schools, which is additional to religious education or sexual education, it works on that issue robustly in school environments. And I actually know there's a commitment, and I'll allow actually Sarah to talk to the specifics around schools, especially boys' schools, around how they address the safety agenda around women and even boys. Boys are also victims of crime as much as women are. So I'll also just
yeah, I mean, thank you, Marlene, and thank you, Chair. So two things. One, I think that we will have seen examples of how we are tackling making our streets safer. We've just launched and opened, I think it's this week, a whole new lighting scheme at Manor Park, because that was an area that people felt that they didn't feel safe. So there's some really progressive street lighting happening there. And, you know, I will plug the community assemblies, because if that's the sort of thing that actually people would like in their community, then they can put in a bid for their community. But on the specific issue of PHSE and also RHSE, every school is required, whether that's a mixed school, whether it's all girls or all boys. And I would say that certainly in our two all boys schools, which is St Bonaventures and Rokeby, they are absolutely vigilant in their language, in their teachings and their learnings about behaviour of young men towards women. And I think that, you know, we should be really proud of how that is being delivered in our schools. And certainly it's very prevalent in our youth zones. There is a no tolerance policy in our youth zones. We do not tolerate any form of abuse, and I would call it abuse from young men to women. But Carlene's right as well. It does work the other way. We can't just assume that violence only ever happens to women, because it doesn't. And we are really conscientious about how we work across our schools, across our youth zones, and also, yes, Carlene's absolutely right. We also have young people who identify as gender specific. I think that we do probably more than most other boroughs in our work, and certainly it is absolute commitment from. It isn't just children's services. So, if you don't see it, I don't know whether you're a school governor. Are you a school governor?
I used to be a school governor.
Right. So I think that as a school, me as a school governor, we raise this on constantly, whether it's, and I just do primary schools. British values, yes, that's right, Colin. British values. James is a governor at a secondary school, and I'm sure that's constantly on the agenda there. So I genuinely think that we cannot do more to promote equality from across our children and people.
Okay. Thank you.
I know that it's a top topic with Michelle at the Youth Justice Service.
Right. Now, some direction in terms of time. We have 10 minutes to go before 9, so my colleagues know what they have to do. That's a hint. We have Councillor Wilson who wants to come in, and then Michelle wants to come in. So I'll just give my colleagues a hint there, Councillor Wilson, then Michelle. So we're going to keep this brief. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, it's very difficult to be brief on complex matters like this. But Chair, I don't want to repeat throughout that, our response in 5.3 is clearly draft, but there are other developments that you may already know that I would wish to allude to at this public meeting. So I'm holding fire on certain things, but on this particular, if it's through the lens of a one council, as Gary rightly said in his remark, this has got to be seen in the context of a domestic abuse strategy that we worked together as one council with 3 cabinet leads at the time, working that through from cabinet based on lived experiences. And I've briefly, if I may, bring in Fiona just to answer that question about how we're linking that. The very, very real issues raised around the safety, or Mum has to come in, my colleague who's leading on this. Either one of them can answer the question about how specifically it segues into the work around the women, because there's women who are also clearly part of this whole piece that is under that Community Safety Board agenda, but also the violence against women and girls. So I don't know, Mum, if you want to start and then bring in Fiona.
Come in, Chair, and I would like Fiona to come in as well. Shanta, this is not something we are seeing lightly at all. Losing one woman is too much. And I think I've spoken about this before, even at the launch, that this is in the Mayor's manifesto. We are taking this seriously, and it is going to be a one council approach with working very closely with children, social care, housing, and adult services. I must say that, some of the work that's being done in our local schools, I would suggest please look into it, because I think the information is there. Fiona, if you want to come in.
Before you come in, Fiona, is there anything new you're going to add that hasn't been said already?
all I was going to say, Chair, was to be quite specific and say that there's an action plan related to the domestic abuse strategy, which has actions for our colleagues in education and youth work. So there are some very specific things around talking to children and young people in schools within there that's being carried out right now.
Okay, thank you. And Michelle?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I was just going to say that, and just to say, Chair, that in the action plan, the focus for children and adolescents is around healthy relationships, and so focus on the ongoing healthy relationships.
Okay.
So just quickly.
Before, and I need to bring someone else. But can someone move standing order?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move standing order.
Is that agreed?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so it's agreed. Stand order, please move.
How long, Chair?
So if any.
Okay, the question was asked how long. I'm hoping to finish by 9:15.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If any specific school doesn't apply the council, the strategies created for school, I will inform you. I'll write to you.
Legal requirements.
The legal
By the Ofsted, right?
All schools.
Yeah. Now, I heard it from the parents, so I'll write to you.
Okay, well, if a school isn't.
Yeah.
Then they actually will be referred to Ofsted.
Yeah.
Or the Secretary of State if it's an academy or preschool. But I would be very careful about what parents say or think that they have.
So what is whether right or wrong, but that's why I'll refer to you.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
But you need to tell me the name of the school. Don't be vague.
Definitely.
Okay, so Roger would like the question to be repeated for the minutes. Right, can you remember the question?
The original question.
Yeah, the original question.
Comment just now.
No, the original question to Councillor Ridgewell, she answered about what's happening in schools.
The next question will be asking me to look at schools who do not deliver RHSE or PHSE.
They do, they all do.
Thank you.
Secondary school age.
Okay. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you very much, Chair. So page 10 or 8, page 10 in the big numbers, page 8 in the small numbers. Looking at the Newham Stay Safe app, which is a really, really interesting development. It's been running since December. How many times has it been downloaded? How many reports have you received through it? And how many times have those reports led to concrete actions?
I'll pass that over to Gary.
I don't have the specific data now. The downloads, obviously we've commissioned an external service to manage this for us. So the download is obviously available on the various sites to download. We've basically asked them, we've had it, I'm trying to think when we launched it. Basically what we said was we want to come back in 6 months and a year to look at downloads. We wouldn't necessarily get told what ends up in an outcome. Some of that will go through to the police. Even some police may not have the details of what ends up as a judicial outcome, like reports, etc. So it's more what we're focused on is trying to get the downloads down and trying to get reports in. So we'll get updates from Stop Hate UK on both the downloads and if I haven't received them yet. I haven't asked them because we've asked them to give us those in bigger chunks as opposed to bite size.
Understood, and it's a draft report. But anecdotally, how are people finding it?
From conversations we've had, and we've run a number of events where we launched it back in December, as it was in December. I've had a number of community events where we've talked to people since. My guys have done pop-up, my guys and girls have done pop-up down in Stratford Town Centre in East Ham, places like that. And anecdotally, people are telling us, oh, we've used it, we got this back. We've also had people telling us, oh, we downloaded it, we couldn't use it, then we struggled with this, so we helped them to fix it again. So I suppose anecdotally, I've been told people are downloading it. People have told us to download it. We've seen some women's groups. They've told us they've sent it out there. They've downloaded it. We tried to advertise it on everything we get out there. We ran a massive ad campaign on Jason Road signs across the borough. The proof will be in the downloads, I think, when we get download figures. But certainly anecdotally, the people might go to on the street and saying, oh, we have it already, look, things like that. But again, we're trying to push it out there as much as we can.
If you don't mind, Chair, I know you're trying to stop me from talking, but I just do want to answer quickly, Councillor Lewis Godfrey's question, because I know that this refers specifically to something I said here in a previous scrutiny where I said I would send it to all members. I did send it to all members. So all members were sent the code, what is it called? QR code and how to download it, of which I know because you came back to me and asked me what's the process. And also, just for another moment, I'm assuming Councillor Wilson and Councillor Ruiz would also be sharing this type of information through their own networks. I know as a school governor, I send it through the school governor pages and through the school newsletters, because that's the duty of which we're elected in office to do. So we use our own platforms to also share that information amongst many others, whether that be residents that attend our surgeries, whether that be through the day-to-day meeting up of people within our locality. But I have definitely sent it to every single elected member in Newham to pass that through their networks.
Thank you. Recommendation 10 speaks to modern slavery. Page 40. 0, paragraph 16 doesn't say much in terms, and I know it's a draft, but it doesn't say much. Who's going to speak to this one, modern slavery? Yeah,
Pick it up, Joe. I think it doesn't. Let's pick it out again. Just 4-0.
Paragraph 6.10. 4-0. Yeah.
So the reason, Chair, and I've written this response. The reason it doesn't say much is the Scrutiny Commission, the actual recommendation was to consider encouraging practice introduction of modern day slavery annual statements for all businesses. The guidance from the Home Office is you need an annual statement if you turn over more than 36 million. There may not be many small businesses. We as an authority have to have an annual statement. Bigger businesses have to have an annual statement. Our strategy and our annual statement is focused also on those providers that we work with and those suppliers having modern day slavery statements and having modern day slavery threaded throughout our commissioning. What we try to do is good practice, and I guess the reason it's brief is we can't. We don't have any governance over holding businesses to account to have a modern day slavery statement. What we do is we promote, and we do it really, I think, quite successfully through the Safer Stratford Business Partnership. That is our wider business partnership. We get the information out there. We run wave training with colleagues. We run modern day slavery training. We explain to them what we expect as responsible businesses. We work clearly quite a lot through our regulatory services through some of those more concerning areas. Nail bars, sort of licensed premises that may well be employing people under the radar, I guess, traditionally in parts of London, the UK, but also linking in with car washes and other areas specifically as well. We've also delivered our modern day slavery process through the Newham Chamber of Commerce, which we deliver a lot of our areas of prime areas and what we're doing through. So I think the reason it's brief is to explain that we have a strategy, we have statements, we have a whole lot of work that goes on. I chair a subgroup that drives this work forward, hugely multi-agency, multi-partnership with police and other colleagues. The point I think is short is, and I was trying to explain it the best way I could, we can encourage businesses, and we always will, to engage in all forms of crime reduction, including modern slavery and human trafficking, but we cannot compel them.
Okay, I hear that.
Sorry, Chair. I've had a question from an officer, and I'm with my colleague here on this. Are you doing?
Before you come in, this bit, and then maybe you could answer it.
No, it's not an art. It's just a procedural point. Are you going through the recommendations in order, albeit in draft form, or are we coming back, for instance, about the sex work one?
No, as I said, I would go where members go with the questioning. So we are not going to go one recommendation after the other, and we only have 15 minutes left. So although it's a draft response, where it's wherever member interest takes them. We know that we're going to get another bite of this when it goes formally to cabinet and then get presented here. So we're not going one after the other. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
You have a question on that?
The question on the modern slavery bit, the responsible business would do their best. Where we would have a problem is a car wash. For instance, people who stand up at Wits waiting to get jobs and so on, and other places that. And I know we cannot enforce, but is there any work we do with those type of enterprise to make certain that the people there are protected and they are not employed under those conditions.
Absolutely, councillor. To disaggregate both things can compel businesses to enforce and to have modern day slavery statements as part of their business. It's not within legislation in a sense. What we do have is a borough-wide modern day slavery strategy where we engage all businesses, we engage those areas. What we do is we very briefly, we train colleagues across all areas on the signs to look out for modern slavery. Where our colleagues either on the street, my officers, regulatory officers, business officers, police are doing this all the time, fire service colleagues, others. And where we identify these things, either in a business or in a home, that is that we would look to the National Referral Mechanism, work with the Human Trafficking Foundation, work to make sure that we do that proper National Referral Mechanism referral that goes into the Home Office to pick this up. So we have colleagues that are trained up to be what we call first responders to report any modern slavery. Absolutely, we are looking at all these areas, as we would at any other crime area. If someone suggested there was a HM business that was potentially housing or encouraging modern slavery, human trafficking, we'd be on it as a partnership, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Now, yes.
I'd like to say something, thank you. Credit due to colleagues from the Met Police. Actually, you mentioned Safe Car Wash. You might know of Douglas Waterman from the Met Police. He actually sends out information and he actually sent something about safe car washes. So credit due to the Met Police about this, about how aspects around modern slavery and helping support victims of vulnerable groups. There's actually an app that people can download. So I'm not sure if members do get this, but if not, certain information like that can be circulated across, because obviously if this is information that would be quite applicable to share with members and a wider consensus, yeah.
Thank you. Right, I haven't seen any other, and as I said before, it's where the question take us, but I know Councillor Wilson wants to come in on sex workers, so I'm going to bring him in the absence of any more hands. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I just wanted to alert this committee, if they're not aware, that an email has gone out in my name. And secondly, that in terms of the question, it's now in the public domain around the recommissioning of the domestic abuse services. It's coming to full cabinet, but the papers are there in for your perusal. It's in full cabinet, and I know that there'll be a discussion with relevant scrutiny chairs, yourself and others, about the cabinet reports. The Domestic Abuse Community Services report is already published. It's on the website for Thursday's cabinet, but I think you're aware of that information. Because one of the, obviously we're all caveating this tonight within the context of a draft report, but it's important that we do flag up, I think, to this committee, and we are in public session, that there is because the public have seen this and hopefully members have, but just to reiterate that there is a response to quite a few of the questions that have exercised on a one council approach, both with the police as partners, but also community safety and children's services, children's social care and adult social care, the whole of the sex work strategy. So they just wanted to alert you to those two items, because I think it's important that we have that on public record, if that's all right with you, Chair.
Thank you. At our meeting on the 9th of May, the sex workers' response, because I wrote to the mayor after your last appearance, she sent a detailed response, which that detailed response will be dealt with by us at Overview Scrutiny Committee, because it was the Overview Scrutiny Committee that we had the sex workers conversation. We're going to be taking it back there to deal with that. So
the cloudy issue, I just wanted to make clear that Fiona and I, or any other relevant cabinet members, it is in response to this report, which we're saying, there's a caveat, this is a draft report for this particular scrutiny, in order to dispose of one or two items that you've got there under the response about, obviously, it's all within the context of the discussions we've had now for over the last year, I think, on this item. So I think it's important for this committee, which we're quite rightly approaching Councillor Lee Parkway in her previous role, and Councillor Rivers and myself, about so 5.7 about the Commission Services report is available for perusal by members of this committee, even if they're not going to the over.
Thank you. And you would.
And sorry, I was in the middle of a sentence. And that the sex work strategy, there has been a press release, and I hope all members have received that.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson, you would have, have you got your invite for May 9th yet?
No. Officers have
yes.
seen something or have been alerted.
On the move.
Is it in the loop?
Okay, so your invite is in the email coming. So
I will look forward to coming back to another.
we deal with this on May 9th, so you would have your time there. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have 10 minutes and we have some to wrap up our meeting. So in terms of the substantive items on the agenda, item 6, 7, 8, we have dealt with these. So I would say thank you everyone for attending. However, because we don't have much more time to go, if you start moving now, it's wrapped us. So I just have one more item to dispense, and then the meeting would then be concluded. So the date of our next meeting would be in June of this year. The date hasn't been fixed as yet. So, and by then it will be the new municipal year. And I thank all members of this commission for the work that you have done and the commission. So thank you very much. Can I thank not overlooking you, Councillor Vardy, but Councillor Lee Parkways being the residing cabinet member through most of the time. So thank you also for the work that you've done.
Thank you.
The municipal year, which was Gary, also thank you. And all the others were more or less visiting, like Sarah and me. You came from time to time, but these were the regulars.
We always come when we get involved.
That's right. Yeah, but these were the regulars who are gracing us every meeting. So thank you.
Like a busman's holiday from regeneration.
Thank you, Chair.
So thank you all for your participation and making this committee what it has been. So I say has been because this is our last meeting. And so have a good break. And the next committee will be in June. Thank you. Yes, because this is the last scrutiny, last meeting for this municipal year.